So thank you so much for joining today. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Dana Steinloggy.
Hey, thank you, Mary Kate, and good day, good morning to everybody. Dana Steinloggy, I'm one of the partners here. I co-lead up our sales organization. I just want to say on behalf of our entire team, very grateful for your time, your interest, and your trust to join us and to gather ideas and insights that hopefully bring value to your organization. So as Mary Kate mentioned, we'll have a survey. We'll be raffling off kind of some of those solo stoves. And also the Q&A, so please welcome that. The genesis of this event kind of came from, over the course of the last year, there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of talk, the intent, and then the works from Broadcom to acquire VMware, and then that kind of finalized finally the end of November. So now some of the changes and anticipated what might be changes have come through. But in the process, as a team, as an organization, we've gotten some questions from you all, from our customers, just on, hey, okay, so we've been heavily invested in VMware, but with these pending changes, we've been asked to go evaluate hypervisor alternatives. And so just kind of pulling back and thinking through that and looking at alternatives. And that's kind of the genesis of what we're going to focus on today, and sharing, hey, what about Nutanix as you're thinking about possible alternatives to what you might have been doing in your data center or for various use cases in your environment over the last however many years that you might have been invested in. You've been invested in VMware as a technology partner for your business. So that's a little bit of the genesis. And then kind of going into that, some of you are very familiar with us. Some of you may not have heard of Choice Solutions and don't know us from Adam. So, we've got folks that are joining us today from all over the country, which is always very exciting. You can kind of see on the map here just where we have a lot of our investments in people, but through referrals, word of mouth, other situations, we've had the opportunity to grow and serve across 46 plus states. So it's pretty cool. Again, we got people from various roles of IT leadership that are joining us today. But I'm very appreciative of your time. So for us, the things that we focus on, that you might be focused on for your organization, is one, it's helping be a partner to your organization as you're looking to improve the technology user experience of your workforce, your hybrid workforce. So you might have a workforce that's working at home, in the office, hybrid. You need them to make sure to have the most high performing, consistent, secure workspace. All the while from IT, for the organization, make sure there's proper security, proper control. Want this to be something that can be a tool to help attract and retain today's top talent. All the while, IT organizations, right? Everybody's been kind of this journey, this right adoption of the cloud for your business, for your application. So going from the legacy, applications, legacy data center approaches, and the right mix of SaaS, the right mix of, modernizing infrastructure. Does it make sense to stay on-prem? Does it make sense to leverage the public cloud? Moving to more of an operational type of model, and want something that can be scalable and flexible, all the while kind of takes in some new approaches for security. All these things taking place, and then, as an IT organization, you're facing small or large. As an IT organization, you're facing constraints, across the board. We find this common in organizations we're visiting with, from retention to attracting, the top talent, to handling day-to-day upkeep, as well as executing on new projects. And so with that, I also found that you hear commonly that there's a lack of strong, good, reputable IT partners, just in this age where there's been a lot of consolidation, and you got a lot of companies end up, the next thing you know, they end up as multi-billion-dollar resellers that are more procurement focused, and maybe not as heavy on the value side for your business, and helping kind of get in there with you and help you investigate and explore, adopt, but also kind of be a partner with you from the beginning to the end, and just that need maybe for IT partnerships there. So that's kind of some of the things that we hear. And as a company and our team, organization, we're here to be a partner with you, for you, helping you adopt simpler, more secure IT environments. So whether it's from the data center or the cloud service, all the way down to the endpoint, that's our goal. That's our focus. We've been a long time, traditional VAR. So we've got a number of very innovative technology partnerships that we work with. VMware being one of them. I think we were one of the first partners west of the Mississippi in the early 2000s, and we started working with them. So a lot of helping you with, technology acquisition and partnership. But some strengths of ours are also just a very, very heavy investment in professional services and technical expertise and resources to help you kind of explore, deploy, maybe do migrations, do health checks, things like that. As well as, again, going back to constraints where we can come in and help if there's gaps, or whether it's in a particular area or across the board, where we might be able to help your team and complement you with various managed IT offerings that we've built. And with that too, we've got some advisory services, especially if you're in, leveraging some strategic uses of end user computing technologies. We can come in and really help you, with those initiatives you might have on modernizing your workspace. So some of our key technology partners just got listed here again. How you might be accessing, delivering apps, desktops in your environment, the underlying infrastructure that you might trust and be relying upon for that. Nutanix has been a 10-year partnership with us, Microsoft and Azure and O365, and a number of areas that we've been growing our expertise. And then how you might be securing that, what you might be doing to secure those endpoints, what you might be leveraging to get real-time insights into what's going on in your environment, as well as how you might be backing up and addressing things from maybe a DRAS, disaster recovery as a service perspective. So specific to Nutanix, very invested. This is a 10-year plus relationship. Again, since we're talking about VMware, VMware early 2000s, significant transformation, right, that everybody experienced in server virtualization and just everything that came from that. We saw the same thing when Nutanix came about 10 plus years ago, kind of another level of disruption and transformation that brings value to you as organizations and commercial enterprises to help simplify your environments and address kind of the new challenges that exist. So that's the level of partnership there. Now, before I kind of get things introduced into Dennis, I just want to share real quick on some of what we know to high level on the VMware changes. Now, you hopefully have access to all this stuff. Again, in the survey, there's a question. If there's anything particular to your environment that maybe we can research or look into and help you advise on around your licensing with VMware, happy to do so. But coming on February 2nd, that'll be the last date. If you have existing renewals or existing quotes that might exist for your existing entitlement, that'll be the last date for you to procure and move forward with purchasing renewals and things like that. And they have to be existing quotes. So there's been some turbulence, there's been some challenges that you might have read across the market on partners like us and just things being suspended as Broadcom made the changes there. So going forward on February 5th and beyond, any kind of renewals, new purchases, especially if you're a vSphere Enterprise Plus customer, which I'm guessing most everyone that'll be joining us today is, you'll be transitioning, over into one of their bundles. So the vSphere Foundation bundle or the VMware Cloud Foundation bundle. So depending on the things you might be leveraging in your environment, you're going to move to one of those bundles. And there's also too, you've seen there's a knowledge base I'm putting in here in the presentation, but you can go see there's been an announcement on the end of availability for a lot of what have been standalone products from VMware. And those are going to be consolidated into some of these bundles, and then some of them will still exist as an opportunity to maybe do a la carte purchases, things like that. So those are some high level things if you aren't familiar with that. A couple things just we're making note of there. Some of you that might be leveraging, let's say, VMware for large scale desktop environment in your end user computing, and maybe using something like Citrix or another VDI broker. That one of the technologies that will no longer be available is vSphere for desktop. So that might be a conversation point. Looks like the vSphere, like remote office, branch office licensing, that also is going to be a change too. So, another thing it's publicly clear that there's intentions there for the EUC business. So like Horizon View, some of the mobile AirWatch technologies, as well as Carbon Black, intentions for those to be divested from Broadcom. So that's just don't know anything further right now on that, but that's just the intentions that have been communicated. So what does that mean? There's been a lot of changes in the EUC landscape if you have end-user computing in your environment. Last year, more changes to come here as we look into 2024 as well. But I'm just going to mention this real quick. At the end of this, there'll be an opportunity to, if you like to kind of get yourself or someone from your team to dive in a little bit further around the Nutanix, specifically AHV, the hypervisor as a part of Nutanix. We're going to have a test drive event on February 13th. So you can just click on that if you're interested, and we'll get you kind of pre-registered for that as a next step, so you can explore further. So with that, that's all the information I've got, and I'd like to get you introduced to Dennis Arnold with Nutanix, who's kind of going to take that next step and share with you, help you get more familiarized with Nutanix.
Thanks everybody for joining and welcome. My name is Dennis Arnold. I'm a channel SE here at Nutanix. I've been at Nutanix now as of this week, as of Monday. It was my 6-year anniversary with Nutanix. So I'm starting to feel like a little bit of a Nutanix old timer, right? And Nutanix, most people think of us as still as a relatively new company, although we've been around for over a decade now. We'll talk about some times and dates, but I'm based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I came to Nutanix from Citrix. Dana mentioned EUC as a workload type. I've lived through many buildups of EUC deployments, and I've seen firsthand and been involved firsthand in a lot of the shortcomings that a legacy infrastructure creates for virtual desktop infrastructure. But that's not what we're going to focus on today. Today, we're going to focus on Nutanix as a VMware alternative. And I'm going to start with a story. Many of you may have heard this story before. Many of you may have not heard this story before. But if you have, stick with me. And we'll get to the meat of this discussion coming up very quickly. So I want to start with these two fellows that you see right here, Larry and Sergey. As soon as I get my slides working, sorry, there we go. Larry and Sergey in the mid to late 90s were PhD students at Stanford, and they had this project whereby they had to create or maybe identify a system that had the ability to rank web pages, right? So they developed this algorithm, and that algorithm allowed them to rank web pages by search results. And it was kind of an interesting thing. And what they did was, obviously they did well on this assignment. And what they did was they thought that maybe other companies in IT in the world, hyperscalers were coming online back then, thought that they could use this technology. So Larry and Sergey tried to sell that algorithm, tried to sell this technology to some companies in the Valley. They were getting some traction with a web hosting company called Excite, but they wanted $1 million for this thing that they had developed, this algorithm. They were denied. They were not able to sell it. So they inevitably decided to take this technology, get some venture capital, and create their own company. And in case you don't recognize these two folks, this is Larry and Sergey. Larry Page and Sergey Brin. They were the founders of Google, right? So they founded this company called Google. And after they founded the company and they got things rolling, a few years later, I think sometime around 2002, Yahoo actually tried to buy Google from these two folks, and Yahoo offered them $3 billion. I want you to think about that for a second. They wanted $1 million. They couldn't find a buyer. And then Yahoo comes along a few years later and tries to buy it for $3 billion. And I want you to sort of plant this idea in your mind. How do you go from $1 million to $3 billion, right? Legitimately, not through stealing bearer bonds and gold or whatever, right? Nobody's going to do that. And now they have a market cap. Google has a market cap of 167 billion, and Yahoo has a market cap of 27 billion. So in some ways, that is a bit of an oopsie on Yahoo's part. But anyway, the core of what they were doing was using data, for something. They were using data, they were gathering data. And remember that back in that time, data centers were built using a variety of different constructs, right? And those constructs are listed here. You built the data out of servers, switches, SAN, NAS, very function-specific hardware. Deploying it was very labor intensive. It took a long time to fix it. You couldn't innovate very quickly with it. And we referred to this as a hardware-defined data center, right? So we had to build up the hardware out of parts and pieces. And most of the time, we would build this out of what we could get for the best price, okay? Well, what did Larry and Sergey do? Do you think they adopted this model? Remember, they went from 1 million to 3 billion based on what? Data. They had to use data. That was the core of their business. That is what they had for sale, okay? So what they did was they developed this operating system, actually. It was called GFS, and they called that Google File System. The Google File System did not use SAN. It used software to aggregate compute and storage. If you're a Nutanix customer, this is probably going to sound familiar to you already. But back then, when this was developed, the enterprise and regular customers like you and I may have been back at that time did not have this capability. Only the hyperscalers were building up in this model. The rest of us were using these same old constructs: servers, storage network, switches, okay, for all of this data. Now, we still use a lot of those constructs now, but there was another thing back in that time that was going on that was very interesting, right? There was this company called VMware. And VMware all of a sudden sort of showed up and started doing some very interesting things with that old bare metal hardware, right? Because remember, it used to be that you would get bare metal hardware and you would put an operating system on it and you would deploy some workload. So it was single function hardware. You might put a database on it. You might put a domain controller on it, or you might build it up as a web server. But that server did that one thing. Well, what did VMware do? They allowed us to virtualize that and carve it up so that we could make maximum effective use of that hardware. And that's described here. If you're speed reading this article from July 21st of 2003, you know what VMware did for us back then. Well, in 2003, more specifically around the July timeframe, VMware introduced this thing called vMotion. And vMotion was like fire for IT people, as some people say, right? The thing about vMotion, though, is it required shared storage. It required a SAN, right? It required the thing that Google was not interested in at all, okay? So, and that's an important distinction. Google was on this path of web scale, fast innovation, fail fast, fast to fix, so on and so forth, massively scalable with ease of scalability. But the rest of us were stuck with the SAN, stuck with legacy infrastructure. So how did we modernize that? We put a virtualization layer on that server and allows us to capture the absolute maximum use out of that server. And I want you to take that idea and sort of put it in your back pocket for now, because you had to have a SAN. Now, a SAN brought in a lot of complexity also. I mean, if you look at this diagram, this is what you needed for vMotion, right? You needed servers, you needed a SAN, you needed the hypervisor, you needed a storage network, you needed a data network, you needed a vMotion network, right? It was great, but it was complex. And not only that, but you needed two of everything, right? How could you build this up and not have redundancy and not have failover capability? This is the architecture that drove SAN. It still does, right? And in 2004, only like 5 months or so after VMware announced the release of vMotion, that capability, what happened? EMC, the big SAN player, buys VMware. It's a smart move, right? Because if I buy the software that's driving adoption of SAN, then I have the best of both worlds, right? Well, back there in the background, guess what the hyperscalers weren't doing? Like Facebook and Google and Microsoft, they weren't buying SANs, right? They were developing their own systems. So in 2009, some of the guys who were former Google employees who worked on GFS, they decided that they wanted to bring software-defined data center to the masses, not just for the hyperscalers, right? So Nutanix was formed in 2009. Remember that the Google file system was not commercially available until the founders of Nutanix brought that hyperscaler method, or also known as the web scale model, on-prem. And sometimes, ask people, think back to that time period. If that web scale model would have been available to you back then, what would you have chose? Would you have chosen to buy physical servers and a SAN network and cobble it all together from different vendors with different pieces with different management? Or would you have chosen to deploy software on commodity servers so that they all collectively presented resources, right? Would you have bought your own cloud is the question, right? So I want you to think about that, because the reality of it is we don't know what kind of pain we're in until we get something better. So what does something better look like, right? It scales fast, it upgrades fast, it has all these benefits, right? And it also comes with an amazing support model. So I'm gonna touch on that more as we go along. Okay, but to better describe some of the tenets of web scale, right? When these web companies like Google, Facebook, when they need infrastructure that couldn't support their business requirements, in other words, when they needed infrastructure other than SAN, because SAN was no good, they realized that legacy infrastructure was a poor fit. Over time, these companies developed an alternative approach to IT that allowed them to get past all of the limitations of legacy infrastructure, right? So they wanted things like fractional consumption, no single point of failure, distributed everything, always on systems, right? And they used unbranded x86 servers. In the case of AWS, they just started manufacturing all of their own stuff, right? But what do they use? They use a software layer that sits on top of that commodity hardware, all of which contributes to the sum total of resources in that cloud. Then they can carve it up. And they use automation in a lot of ways to make sure that they eliminate user error and things like that. So it's all of this stuff pulled together. Now, when we compare this directly to the architecture of 3-tier, we start to see some of the big differences, right? And I refer to this process as decomplexification. That's my word, by the way. I made that up. You can use it if you want. You don't have to pay me royalties to use my word. That's okay. But the Nutanix Cloud Platform addresses that cost and complexity associated with the traditional 3-tier data center infrastructure that you see on the left, right? And there's nowadays there's so little value to building infrastructure with that legacy mindset, right? So what did you have to do? If you continue to do this, you've got your server vendor, you got your SAN vendor, you've got your storage network vendor, you got your virtualization vendor. How long does it take to build this up? Well, I can tell you that it takes weeks or months to design it, to procure it, to deploy it, to provision infrastructure, right? That piece of it is very important to us, and we refer to that as time to value. Time to value is a very important concept, and we look at that and we say, what is time to value? How do we reduce time to value, right? Time to value is the time it takes for us to get a thing and realize the value of that thing. And when there were many cases where I was building out complex infrastructures as an engineer, whether with Nutanix or I'm sorry, whether with Citrix or with a partner. And it would take months to build all of it out. You got to build it out. You got to patch it. You've got all these different places to go for support. It's difficult. It's time consuming. It doesn't scale well. That was the other thing, right? So with Nutanix, fail fast, scale easily, scale in a linear way. We'll talk a little bit more about how that occurs as we go on. But on the right-hand side of this image, or of this slide, what you have is infrastructure that's in an hour, it's ready to use. That's time to value. You can start small. You can scale linearly, as I mentioned, right? There's no guesswork behind scaling Nutanix. There's no guesswork behind sizing Nutanix. It's not this weird art form like it used to be with 3-tier. Well, how much of a thing do I need? Well, I don't know. When am I going to run out of space with this thing? If I need another server, can I add another server? If I add another server, am I going over capacity for just in case? At what point do I have to add a whole nother storage array? And am I going to have to add it in pairs? And then how much am I going to have? And when am I going to use? You see, it's all guesswork. With Nutanix, it's not guesswork. Okay, but why should you care about all this? Why should you care about modern infrastructure? One of the main reasons is you have the opportunity, and honestly, for quite a while now, a decade or so, you've had the opportunity to unlock yourself from 3-tier and the reliance on a legacy hypervisor. And that's what we're really talking about today. Not only unlock yourself from the legacy hypervisor, but the poor support that comes with it, inevitably, and the attitude that comes from knowing you're stuck with them, right? So who is the new them? Who is it that you're stuck with? Well, it's Broadcom, right? At least they think that you're stuck with them. Broadcom has purchased one of the most beloved software companies. And even though I compete with VMware, I've been competing with VMware for several years, whether at Nutanix or whether at Citrix, the fact is they got good software, right? They gave us virtualization and it changed everything. And that's awesome. And they kept that up, and that's great. But you are not locked into that, right? Broadcom thinks you are, but make no mistake, you are not locked into that. So after all of these things, after all of the industry analysts said, oh, this and such is going to happen, Dana touched on a few of the things that actually have come to fruition as a result of the Broadcom acquisition of VMware. And so customers, many of you perhaps, are looking for alternatives. Customers want to see, or customers have seen that what the analysts predicted are actually coming true. Oftentimes, cloud is a first choice as an alternative to Broadcom and VMware. But native public cloud, it can be tricky. What if you want to stay on-prem? What if you want to be partially on-prem and partially in the cloud? What infrastructure lends itself to that, right? And again, Broadcom is stuck with Broadcom is under the impression that you're stuck with them. So what are you doing? What can you do? What do some of the alternatives look like? Well, you can keep writing that check to Broadcom. That's okay. That'll work. You could stay on that. You can move to public cloud. In many cases, though, what is public cloud, right? It's another silo. It's another silo of technology. It requires its own skill sets. What you know about legacy on-prem infrastructure does not translate to public cloud. These are just two entirely different entities, and it's very difficult to connect these things seamlessly if you have 3-tier and you want to be in public cloud or have a combination there in a hybrid cloud, right? Web scale, that's a nice choice, of course, especially when you consider the cost comparison, the ease of deployment, the ease of management, the extensibility to cloud, right? It starts to become a little more of a favorable option. But this is what Broadcom expects from you, okay? What innovation has recently come from 3-tier, right? How has 2 decades of 3-tier refresh cycles benefited your business? You have to ask yourself that, right? If you use the same old thinking, you get the same old results. So how do you break out of that, right? Well, there's a lot more impetus now than there was in the past with the acquisition. So what do we bring? Well, since 2012, and we started the company in 2009, we went to market in 2012. Nutanix has sort of semi-quietly been building this cloud platform. I say quietly because the fact is a lot of customers don't even know that we exist. Even after 10 years in the business, many customers don't know that we exist. Now, Choice recognized Nutanix as value way back in 2013 at VMware World or VMworld. By 2014, Choice was a partner of Nutanix and has been an amazing partner ever since. So those of you who are on this call, you were invited here by Choice. They're a fantastic partner, and they have been with us for a very long time. Now, a modern infrastructure requires a modern platform. That's what we have here, a platform that has all of the features and all of the functions that you need to run the business while the business grows and innovates. Nutanix brings all of this to our customers, regardless of the workload, regardless of the data location. And I like to say what we do on-prem, we do in cloud. We do anywhere. What we do in on-prem, we do on the edge. We do in the cloud. We do on a service provider platform, right? Portable licensing, portable workloads, common management. I'm gonna emphasize the common platform, common management over and over again as we go along. And we have a number of strengths. We are not new to this, right? We were born in cloud as a cloud company. We are a software company. I get that. We were identified as an appliance company, a box pusher, if you will, early on. But the box was simply a means by which we delivered our software. That is where our value is, right? So as a result of that, we give customers many choices. You can choose your hypervisor. Obviously, we want you to choose our hypervisor, and I'll talk more about it and why. Choice of hardware, choice of cloud. Any workload can be run on Nutanix. We don't look at a workload and go, ooh, whoops, yeah, that's not a good one for us. They're all good workloads for us. We use a modern design, not a legacy design, but a modern design. We emphasize simplicity in all of our products, whether it's automation, whether it's self-healing and remediation, self-service components. We have those built into our platform. And we do all of this while maintaining our 90 NPS score. A lot of people don't know what NPS score is. It basically is a measure of whether our customers will recommend us to others, right? It's that simple. Almost every almost every company that has customers has an NPS score. You can just look them up. You can Google NetApp NPS score. You can Google VMware NPS score. You can Google for VMware. VMware has historically had in the mid 40s, whereas we're in the 90s. Big difference. Broadcom. What does Broadcom have? Net zero, right? Net zero, and that's not a product. That's not a good thing because the range is from -100 to 100. So I think it's an amazing thing, and it's a tribute to the value that we place on customer satisfaction. But why would you even consider different virtualization? There's a number of reasons why a modern infrastructure, a modern hypervisor would be desirable, right? What do you get from legacy virtualization? It's designed for legacy infrastructure. It promotes ecosystem lock-in, hardware lock-in. Its security is complex. Its management is complex. Because what is it really? It's the cobbling together of bits and pieces from separate sources, from separate manufacturers, each of which has its own life cycle, its own management, its own mechanism for security, right? Whereas a modern hypervisor is designed for HCI, it's designed for hyperconverged, it's designed for hybrid cloud. It promotes choice. It doesn't eliminate choice. It promotes simplified management. It promotes native security, native, right? Platform. Centralized management for distributed environments, right? And it is powerful. Make no mistake that AHV is a powerful hypervisor, and it's included. It's not free. Okay, I didn't say it was free. I said it was included. AHV as a hypervisor is not a thing unto itself. We don't monetize it. We include it with our platform. There's no license cost for the virtualization. There's no license cost for core management. Core management in and of itself is not an entity that requires its own scaling, its own infrastructure. Okay. So AHV is in fact the best option for giving customers choice with hypervisors, especially if they're looking for an alternative to Broadcom, or as I affectionately call BHV, Broadcom hypervisor. Nutanix with AHV delivers operational simplicity, cost reduction, right? No licensing costs for the hypervisor. It's included. Did I mention it's included? I think I did, right? But it provides us with a number of things as a part of a full stack: virtual networking, flow, microsegmentation, automation with Calm, backup, DR, all of these things natively integrated, high performance for business critical applications. And that is actually our primary workload right now. A lot of you might think, well, they're a VDI play or they're whatever. No, mission critical workloads is our sweet spot. That is where the vast majority of our deployments are used. Okay. Very powerful, very enterprise ready, very good ecosystem support, over 800 solutions validated to work with AHV. That once upon a time, there was this idea of, well, if I have these virtual appliances or I have this workload, it's not supported on AHV. That is almost completely gone now. Okay. So we have the ecosystem support that allows you to determine how you want to protect your data, secure your environment, what you want to use for VDI, right? We've got a number of choices there, third-party choices, ecosystem choices, additional management options if you see fit to use those, various DevOps connections, app development. So a lot of value there in terms of ecosystem. So don't think, well, if I go to AHV, I might not get support on these things that I have. I'm pretty sure it's supported at this point. Now, you do not have to do infrastructure modernization in one big step, okay? We could take a phased approach. You can add in a workload in your organization using AHV, a VDI workload in and unto itself, DevOps environment, a NAS. I want you to think about that for a second. A lot of people didn't realize and don't know that we can use Nutanix just for storage, just for file shares, right? It's fast, it's resilient, and it's leveraged the way you normally leverage file shares, right? Whack, server name, whack, share, right? That can be a Nutanix solution unto itself. So can we replace a NAS? Yes, absolutely. Okay, we definitely can do that. We can also take on a cross hypervisor model. So, and the reason I mention this is because for customers who have Nutanix and they run Nutanix on VMware hypervisor, when they run it on ESX, you can add Nutanix AHV to that environment and still have common management. It's not a one or the other scenario. I can add storage only nodes to an existing Nutanix environment running on ESX. So this cross hypervisor functionality, it's not just for disaster recovery, and I'll show how we can use that for migration to a new hypervisor too, right? So there's a lot of value in this. And what do we hear from our customers? Customers who've switched over to Nutanix and or AHV. It's easy to learn. It's easy to deploy and manage. Remember, return or time to value. I want you to remember that, time to value, easy to deploy, easy to manage, quick time to resolution. This is a manifestation of our NPS score, right? Delivers natively integrated platform capabilities. I can't emphasize that enough. Native, integrated. That doesn't mean locked in. That means there's a lot of value to it, and you don't have to go find other products to add in to figure out how to meet your business needs. You don't have to go shopping for features. they exist in the platform and they exist natively in the platform. Another thing that we provide, flexible scalability. Remember, I mentioned that modernizing infrastructure does not require rip and replace. You can start small, you can scale on demand. One of the most costly and challenging aspects of designing traditional 3-tier is buying enough hardware to support future workloads. AOS scales linearly and predictably, and we give you tools that allow you to look at your current infrastructure and determine when you're going to need more and what you should get, right? We can mix and match node types and workloads, right? So we are not locked in. If you buy into Nutanix, you're not locked in to that single platform build or that single configuration, right? You can add new things to the old cluster while you phase out the older pieces of that Nutanix cluster, right? So linear scalability, predictable scalability. This is all due to web scale architecture, not legacy 3-tier architecture. You buy what you need today, okay, instead of having to buy for 5 years down the road, like you do with storage, right? If storage resources are running out faster, add storage nodes. If compute is running out, add compute nodes. You don't have to figure out and guess where you think you might be later on down the road, okay? Customers who have converted over to AHV, they say a lot of nice things about AHV. JetBlue, big customer, they went all in on AHV. And this is interesting to me. It took us less than a week to become comfortable with AHV. Less than a week. Have you worked on trying to figure out cloud? Did it take a week? I think it took longer than a week, right? It took me longer than a week to figure out Azure and to figure out AWS because it was unlike anything that I had done before. However, if you have been doing virtualization, if you have been doing 3-tier, this is a very easy switch mentally to understand and to figure out AHV. When I first came to work at Nutanix, you know, there was a lot of promotion, and there still is around our management. It's called Prism. Okay, Prism is our management, and you know, they said we do all of our management from a single pane of glass. And initially, when I came to Nutanix, I thought, oh my gosh, another very complex management console where they just took all of the components of all of the other management consoles and just stuck it into this one. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised years ago when I discovered that Prism, easy to figure out. AHV, easy to figure out, right? And so same customer says it's a simple solution with everything we need displayed in one console. And we love, and everybody loves, one-click non-disruptive upgrades, right? One-click non-disruptive upgrades. We love that. And that's what we bring to our customers, right? Now, in terms of adoption, it's important to call out the fact that adoption is growing very rapidly. The hypervisor was a one-horse race for a long time, even for Nutanix. When we first went to market, we went to market on ESX. And inevitably, through customer demand, big customer demand, we developed our own hypervisor, AHV. And you can see here, AHV adoption is up to 69% as a percent of total cores. That's big. When I first came to work at Nutanix 6 years ago, it was in the 20s, right? Adoption was in the 20s. So, and this whole VMware uncertainty Broadcom thing that has caused this number to go up significantly. This was at the end of Q1. I suspect that number is over 70% now because it has been growing rapidly. And why is that? Because it has value. It's not just because of what VMware and Broadcom are doing. It's because AHV is valid. It's enterprise. It has all of the features and functionality that you expect. And we can draw a comparison between these things, right? So when we look at this, a lot of potential customers were afraid to make this move to a different hypervisor, right? They thought AOS was dependent on AHV or that you needed AHV to derive any real value from AOS. But even though we've always been able to run on ESX, but we have in the entire stack that compares Nutanix Cloud Infrastructure. This is our core product, NCI, as we call it. We used to call it Core AOS. For those of you who have known about Nutanix for a long time, this provides us with all the core functionality, the hypervisor, the distributed storage fabric, container orchestration, replication of DR, network overlays in the form of Flow VPC, microsegmentation, a security entity, right? This is one product. This is one thing that has all of that, not 5 different products. Unified storage. Again, why do we call it unified storage? Because we can support multiple different types of storage on our storage platform and it be part of the cluster. I don't have to go build out a separate thing for unified storage. I can if I want to, but I don't have to. Cloud management, right? That gives us intelligent operations, self-service, orchestration, cost governance, not only cost governance for on-prem, but cost governance for public cloud. Move, I'm going to talk about Move more as we move along. NDB, this is a big one. NDB is an amazing product. I don't want to get into NDB on this call because I can't really give it due diligence. I can't give it the justice that it deserves. But if you have databases, if you have a fairly significant database infrastructure, take a look at Nutanix. Again, you get all of the data resiliency, the failure handling, the performance, all of that applied to your database infrastructure, okay? And then, of course, Nutanix Cloud Clusters. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as we move on when I talk some about hybrid cloud. But now you're wondering, how do I get there, right? How do I achieve this journey to hybrid cloud nirvana or modern infrastructure? Well, it's all been mapped out for you already right here on the back of a napkin. See, simple, very easy. No, I'm just kidding. This is not the path. The path is actually much simpler than this. But most of you are kind of somewhere over on the left, or maybe in that drift of uncertainty, which is kind of funny. That's why I like this slide, because I think that's kind of a funny place to be. Many people are there, but we have a number of different ways we can do this. Now, I want to start with saying we can do a simple in-place conversion. For those of you who run Nutanix on ESX, there is an in-place upgrade. We don't always recommend this for production. In fact, I would go so far as to say, if you have production mission critical workloads, you probably don't want to do an in-place upgrade. But if you have started with something like this for test dev, QA, whatever the case might be, and you decide, you know what, I want to try out AHV, you can flip this Nutanix cluster running ESX right to AHV. Click a button, boom, you go from VMware vSphere to AHV. Simple in-place conversion. Now, if you want to do a little bit more of a phased approach, right? You can try out you can try out AHV perhaps as a DR scenario. And this is actually very common for customers who run Nutanix on VMware, and they don't want to invest in licensing for VMware in a DR environment, right? We can run AHV in the DR environment and simply do cross hypervisor migration, because in the DR environment, when the VMs come up, the VM's just a VM. It just happens to be run on AHV instead of VMware. So we can use this as a migration mechanism. But most of the time, we recommend Nutanix Move, right? So we could do workload rehosting with Nutanix Move. Move is a cross-hypervisor mobility solution that allows you to move virtual machines and workloads with minimal downtime, right? We can move to and from cloud. We can move from ESX or Hyper-V to cloud or to Nutanix AHV. A very, very easy to use tool. We deploy it as a VM. We identify the VMs that we want to move, where we want to move them to, and we can move them in batches and do all sorts of interesting enterprise things. This is not installing VMware Convert on your laptop and grabbing VMs one at a time and converting them. We are grabbing a big old bunch of VMs, however many you want, in batches, one-click migration. Okay. So very, very handy tool, very good for achieving this ideal state. The ideal state. What is the ideal state? Well, for many customers, it's hybrid cloud. We see this, and Forrester sees this as the ideal scenario for infrastructure. In fact, Forrester tells us, I read an article recently that was written by Forrester that said 1 in 4 VMware customers will get off of their platform in the next year, the next 1 year. This is an article that came out a month or so ago. 1 in 4 customers will get off of VMware's platform. Where are they going to go? Public cloud, AHV. Those are only 2 really legitimate alternatives that I could think of. But the thing that was very, very interesting to me is the comments, right? I mean, a lot of times, you know, you skim through an article and you go straight to the comments, right? Well, when I went to the comments after I read the article, I could not believe the sheer volume of comments that said, oh, well, there's no alternative to VMware. Where are people going to go? What enterprise hypervisor exists? And that blew my mind. But it gave me kind of a checkpoint, a realization that not everybody knows who we are, despite the fact that we've been doing this for a dozen years. Not everybody knows who we are. So it's important for us and for you to spread the word, right? Because there is an alternative. And one of the other things about this is that, remember, legacy infrastructure does not lend itself to seamless multi-cloud or even hybrid cloud. Those legacy constructs do not exist at the hyperscaler level. Customers are looking for these things. The value of private cloud combined with the value of public cloud. Okay. What's the fastest, easiest way to cloud? Nutanix Cloud Clusters, right? Choice Solutions is an expert at this. Let them help you figure out how to navigate this journey. And this, what you see on this slide, is what you get for modern infrastructure combined with hybrid cloud. There is no natural extension, as I mentioned. Okay. Now, before you as a customer go buy another 3-tier construct, whether it's storage, whether it's compute, whether it's legacy hypervisor, ask yourself about your cloud initiatives. Ask yourself about how you're going to get to cloud, if you want to get to cloud, and if you want to get there, how you're going to do it. And ask yourself if that purchase, if that additional legacy 3-tier purchase gets you any closer to cloud, if that's the path you're on. And I think you'll find that it does not get you closer to cloud. Modern infrastructure gets you closer to cloud. And then remind yourself that the same old thinking gets the same old results. Remember that slide? Okay, so now that you know what modern infrastructure does for you, now that you know that it creates some seamless mobility to cloud, and you know how to move those workloads, think back to one of the main reasons customers adopted VMware, other than vMotion. Efficiency. What did VMware do for bare metal servers? They drove efficiency. They allowed us to get the absolute maximum effective use out of that hardware spend. Native cloud requires you, current native cloud requires that you leverage these t-shirt sizes, right? Small, medium, large, extra large, so on. But what it does not provide to you, native cloud, is efficiency. You are forced into putting a workload or a VM into an instance type, and you are very likely to have to overcommit on resources just to be sure you don't run out, because that's what you get. This creates waste. And in the cloud, guess what? You're going to pay for that waste, whether you use it or not. So what I'm telling you is that we are the fastest way to cloud. We are the most cost-effective way to leverage cloud. Okay. What we do for cloud is what VMware did for bare metal data centers. We drive efficiency into cloud. and that saves you money. How much money does it save you? Well, if you want to know, talk to our friends at Choice. They're an amazing partner. They have access to these awesome tools that allow them to help you do cost comparisons. What does it look like if I want to go to public cloud compared to on-prem? What does it look like if I want hybrid cloud compared to legacy 3-tier infrastructure, right? So like I said, Choice has the tools to make sure that you have a cost comparison, so you're not jumping into this with both feet blindly. From an experience perspective, if you want to try it out, we could try it out on test drive. All of you as customers have access to Nutanix Test Drive. It is a walkthrough, right? You go into test drive, it's free, it's easy to use. If you want to look at how to modernize your storage platform, you click on that button and it walks you through. This is how you create a file server. This is how you create a file share. This is how you create a VM, so on and so forth. This is how you do advanced analytics and automation. And we show you how to do it in like 5 minutes. So it has to be simple, or we wouldn't be able to walk you through it in a very simple, fast, easy to understand way. So I would encourage you to sign up for Nutanix Test Drive. You'll get access to it instantly. You can have access to it for 2 hours. You can go off script if you want. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And that's all I have for today. Well, actually, I do have one more thing. I'm sure that if you know me, you know that I love dad jokes. So I have to ask you this one. Did you hear about the rainbow that committed a felony? Well, this is cloud related, right? The rainbow that committed a felony. It was sent to prison, but it was a light sentence. So sorry I didn't have more jokes for you today. They were in there, but I knew that I was short on time. So I appreciate everybody's attention. I'm going to turn back over to the Choice team. They had mentioned that there's a boot camp coming up. Hopefully you'll be able to attend the boot camp. Again, I appreciate your time today. I hope everybody wins something great as a parting gift. I'll turn over to Dana. Thanks, everybody.
Dennis, thank you. We just got a couple minutes left. Appreciate everyone's time. And Dennis, thanks for going through all the information. Obviously, kind of going through high level in some different areas and exposure for your organization, whether they're already on Nutanix and contemplating moving from ESX over to AHV, or you're just net new and just kind of looking for alternatives and getting ideas and seeking ideas and input. So obviously, very few organizations are in a position where it's going to be like a complete overnight type of migration. If you are looking at alternatives, we've engaged in different conversations with customers, kind of like, hey, we're looking for alternatives, and kind of sitting down with them. And some of it depends on our partnership and where we might be with them, but understanding kind of where, applications, where you're leveraging virtualization, and gathering ideas on, okay, maybe here's some ideas where you can reduce your footprint and dependency. Maybe there's some core areas you're just not, it's ESX is going to exist. You've got other infrastructure investments. It just doesn't make sense yet, but you might have new application projects or some other use cases where we might be able to help you get started with that strategy. And like Dennis was saying, that whole modernization plan is to help develop a strategy over time, and maybe it helps you make that transition over time. So some areas common, again, there's some different licensing depending on the use cases, like in end user computing. I mentioned the vSphere for desktops. End user computing, Nutanix has a very, very nice offer and licensing option that you can pursue if you have just dedicated use case for something like that. Again, the branch office, there's sharing on the unified storage, just things that might exist there. So a lot of options, a lot of possibilities. Certainly if you get one of the scenarios where you got a greenfield application project, that could be a perfect scenario. Nutanix has had some pretty visible wins publicized that were greenfield type of multi-billion-dollar facilities that went and chose to go all in Nutanix, from the hypervisor down. So some nice things, nice accolades and nice opportunities there. On the survey, if you have any questions, again, on VMware stuff, if there's the test drives, select that. Also too, if you'd be interested in just more of a one-on-one type of conversation, we've got some amazing expertise on our staff and on our team that have spent time both, working for VMware and Nutanix that can be accessible for just Q&A, or maybe kind of get more into the details on questions that you might have. So those are all things that are available. If anything like that would be of interest, just indicated on the survey. We really, really appreciate your time, the opportunity to share this information, and there's any opportunities to engage in additional dialogue to help you answer questions and understand this alternative and how it might bring value to your business in particular areas in the short term, but also the long term. So Dennis, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Make sure to do your surveys. Those stove fireplaces look awesome, and look forward to you guys earning those through the feedback we share. So thanks so much. We appreciate it. Have an awesome day, everybody.